acknowledge that we're meeting on Jara country, of which the members and elders of the Jara community and their forebears have been custodians for many centuries and have performed age-old ceremonies of celebration, initiation and renewal. We acknowledge their living culture and their unique role in the life of this region. Council meetings are audio and video recorded and are made available to the public via electronic media, including YouTube. Okay, I'd like to thank the councillors that are in attendance. We've got Councillor Neer, Councillor Maltby, Councillor Driscoll and Councillor Cordy. We've got Councillor Gardner and Councillor McClure on Zoom. I'd also like to thank our directors and CEO for being present. Councillors, before we move on, I'll just say Councillor Henson will be with us shortly, so we won't record her as an apology. Declarations of interest and conflicts of interest, councillors. Anything to report? There should be nothing to report. Thank you. 4.3 of our agenda, submissions, the draft rating strategy 2022 to 2027. Draft rating strategy 2022 to 2027 was released for community engagement from Monday 30th of August to Wednesday 8th of September 2021 for community review and comment. This paper provides councillors with the feedback and comments received from the community engagement. Councillors, we have the recommendation. We have a motion, please.
I'll move that council hears any person who wishes to address council on the draft rating strategy at a special meeting of council on Tuesday the 14th of September 2021 at 6 p.m. And 2, after considering the information and feedback received from the community engagement, notes that the final draft of the rating strategy 2022 to 2027 will be presented for adoption at the meeting of council on the 16th of November 2021.
Have a second, please. Councillor Neer, so moved. Councillor Maltby. All those in favour? There being no objection, I declare the matter carried. Okay, just for those visitors that we've got with us this evening, I'll just make a couple of comments that every council conducts rating reviews. It's a normal part of council or a normal part of the business of council. We engage a suitably qualified consultant that specialises in municipal rating to advise us. The rating strategy that's been out for comment is a report prepared by the consultant. This meeting is convened to hear from residents wanting to provide feedback on the draft rating strategy report that our consultant has prepared. Council will take on board all of the comments received from our community and make a decision at that November council meeting. So what we'll do is we've got a written submission from Alison Nye. We'll hear that first, and Councillor Anir will read it out. Thank you, Councillor Anir.
Objection to increased commercial rates. It has been reported that consultants had advised that commercial rates be raised. Why can we not work out this sort of budgeting in our own council? What are staff for? Where the traders consulted? How did this news, when it was known, make many feel sick? Yes, some even cried. Council staff and elected councillors turn up to their place of work, which is tweaked, clean, free of graffiti, painted up, gardened, no truck pollution, overall a pleasant place to be. What do we face in Barker Street, Block 2 East? Pockmarked footpaths, dog-stained frontages, dirty bin surrounds, weeds growing around posts, one poor old seat, not touched with a cleaning or paintbrush for maybe 10 years, no plants, no planters, no pathwets, and some poor excuse for trees in the nature strip. polluted black air from heavy vehicles, and you want to charge more for this? Is this a joke? Take a wander around CBD streets. Many are suffering the same scenario. We are still awaiting an answer to our correspondence. We have been ignored, except for a staff member making contact RE Seating, and Monday 14th, a half-washed street. Yes, up to my place. An issue relating to my personal one, RE damage to vintage tiles damaged at my premises, has had a response, not to be confused with the Barker Street B2E problems. Both Castlemaine and Malden business have around 70% or more of their trade wiped from their existence. The rare few have done very well from COVID, but about 30% did not receive government assistance because they did not qualify. Farmers have done well over the past 2 years. Why should their rate be slashed when we will have to pay for that privilege? Of course, Airbnb accommodation should be charged at commercial rates. It is where the income is being derived. Don't discriminate though. All home businesses should be charged at a commercial rate as well. Many are operating from home and deriving their incomes from a cheaper option. No permits required. A year ago, the president of the MA Business Association boasted there were 2,000 registered businesses in the Shire, 1,000 working from home. What has council done to rectify this anomaly in charges? It also should be noted that in Malden and Castlemaine CBD, the business are predominantly run by women. This makes the rise a gender-related one. Why are women being discriminated against in business? Why should women be penalised? They deserve to earn their income through retail as much as men. This Shire still has the same management from when we lost our female mayor not so long ago. The ratepayers have never been given an answer to her sudden resignation, yet another gender-related issue. If council wishes to retain a unique mix of shops, drawing visitors from Bendigo, Meld and other areas, then don't price them out of their existence. It should be noted that the tenant pays the rates in most cases, not the landlord. Let's build on making the Shire an experience to visit, not just another ho-hum town. The local traders are your tourist trade. They're a thought for those who have been through a very tough time not trading, but still paying, whilst council workers, councillors still get paid. How would you really feel in our shoes at the moment? It will take so many years to recover. Raising the commercial rate will do nothing to assist. Do I sound angry and upset? Too right. This is cruel, thoughtless, discriminatory, and an attack on women trying to earn a living. From Alison Nye.
Thanks for that, Councillor Anir, and thanks to Alison for putting pen to paper. Next, we'll hear from Brendan Blake of the Maxi Foods Group via Zoom. And Brendan, if you can try and keep your submission to 3 minutes, please. Thank you.
Yes, thanks, councillors. Thanks for having me tonight. There are 5 points that I presented in my letter, which no doubt you've all read, and they relate to the ongoing cost of businesses in the Shire who pay rates, who are currently struggling under the pandemic. There's no end in sight to the lack of support, the lack of business for local traders, particularly from people from Melbourne who are restricted from coming up to Castlemaine to do the shopping. We have seen the same thing in other municipalities where I run businesses. We've got Dalesford practically shut down. Even the stores that can trade won't trade. They've still got to pay their rates. They struggle to pay their staff, let alone, I think, sometimes put food on the table. The landlord has to pay the rates if the business fails or if the tenant can't pay the rates. The landlord also pays the land tax. If there's an increase in council rates, there is an increase in land tax. So there's actually a twofold increase if there's an increase to the base rate. Anecdotally, I have one tenant who hasn't paid me rent for months. It's a gymnasium in Ballarat. He hasn't been trading. He can't get rental assistance. I've simply said, don't pay me until you can. He has an inability to pay rates. He can't pay rent. I pay his land tax. So there are 3 costs there that I have to bear. No rent, council rates and land tax for no revenue. And this is one example as to what's happening across our regions in Victoria at the moment. I just think it's an inopportune time to raise rates. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Brendan. Appreciate your input. The next person to speak that we know about is Leonie Stevens. Is Leonie in the chamber?
Yeah, I'm here.
Leonie, if you could come up to the lectern, please.
Yes, ready to go ahead. I really don't know what to say. I've been listening to a lot of people talking about the effects of the rate rises, and I'm really quite taken aback by the fact that you're planning to do it now with COVID affecting so many people in the community, and the commercial area of Malden is really not doing that well. So I really don't understand that. I have 2 commercial properties in Malden. The tenants really can't even sign a lease because they're too worried about their loss of income. So it's an ongoing thing, so that you can understand. I also do run accommodation. I've had no guests for a long time, no income. It's only a very small business, and I run it for the simple reason that the building it's in is an historic building. It requires a hell of a lot of upkeep. Basically, all of the income I get from the accommodation goes to maintain that building, which is on the historic register. I don't think people understand that just how much goes into it, so much time, energy and maintenance goes into providing a small town like Malden with a really nice buildings, well upkept, you know, nice buildings. So I think that it's really unfair what you're planning with the commercial increases. I think just looking at I just paid my rates today, and I noticed that my commercial fire levies are nearly $600 for each of those buildings. So I think that might affect adversely people as well. I also wonder, I'm just trying to put this very nicely, because I've lived in Malden 35 years, and quite frankly, I don't think council does enough to maintain Malden at all. In fact, I took photos today of gutters just totally full of leaves and weeds, and actually with the potential of the next outpour to flood. So I just wonder really what's happening with the council's maintenance of Malden. That's what I'm wondering. So it's unfair. There's lots of other things too. I mean, it's just goes on forever really. But that's the main thing that I wanted to say, that I think it's very inopportune time with COVID to be considering making the small accommodation places commercial. It affects everybody, the income, the businesses, everything. And if you've been to Malden, you probably see it's not a really rich town. A lot of shops are empty now. They need maintenance, so that's about all I can have to say. I'm sure there's more.
Thanks for that, Leonie. Appreciate you coming in. The next one to speak is Kate Gamble. Just can you hear Stephen and Gary? Yep, thank you.
I apologise, I'll be a little bit longer than 3 minutes, but hopefully not too much. Hope that's okay. So thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. I'm here in my capacity as President of Malden Inc. and as an accommodation provider, and I wish to speak to both recommendations 5 and 9. To recommendation 5, the proposal to increase commercial rents. I do not need to labour the point that's already been made, that this could not come at a worse time for small businesses. To be honest, we've all found it rather distressing that council would seek to add such a significant burden to the financial and emotional toll the past 18 months have brought on this segment of ratepayers, their staff and their families. Malden businesses have largely hung on through the pandemic, but that survival was precarious. I've spoken to a number of traders over the past few weeks who are seriously questioning their capacity to continue in the face of the escalating outbreak and extended lockdown from Melbourne. Melbourne has an economy almost entirely reliant on tourism and the visitor economy. It has a history of transience amongst our traders who often seem to misjudge the viability of only really trading for 2 days a week. We actually had a few new businesses appear last year, which was fantastic. But even with the increase in visitor numbers, when people from Melbourne are able to travel freely, these businesses are already struggling to cover costs. The increase in property prices across regional Victoria already impacts on traders. The phenomenal rise in property prices over this time gives rise to a similar increase in valuations and thereby council rates. These significant increases in overheads aren't being matched by an increase in turnover. And obviously, for some businesses it's different. The businesses like supermarkets perhaps haven't been so badly impacted or impacted in different ways, I guess, to many of the smaller businesses. It's unlikely the situation will change significantly even with government strategies that are being adopted currently, and further lockdowns can be expected, especially through the winter months of 2022, which are coincidentally our peak tourist season. The impact will certainly be an emptying out of traders in the smaller towns of the Shire, and this will definitely be the case in Malton, as some traders have already indicated that they will close. Regarding recommendation 9, which is the proposal to rate short-term accommodation properties as commercial, I really wanted to correct a few misconceptions. Firstly, there seems to be a strong perception that short-term accommodation does not contribute to the local economy or to the local community. Using my small cottage in Castlemaine as an example, I went through these figures today because I've been trialling different strategies and looking at what I might do going forward, and in the light of the rating strategy as well. So it was a timely point to actually do some of these figures, and it was quite startling. So it costs $390 for a 2-night stay for 2 people. 67.5% of this tariff goes directly to the community. That pays cleaners, lawn mowers, window cleaners, maintenance people. It pays for supplies for guests, things like coffees, teas from the tea dispensary, all sorts of products from different producers around the region that showcase what the region has to offer. It pays for general consumables like firewood, bottled gas, cleaning products and the like. A further 18.5% currently goes to Council, Colyburn Water and the Malden and District Community Bank. The conventionally accepted metric says that an overnight stay contributes 5 times the income to the local economy as a day trip. Including councils or using council's figures for the average direct spend of visitors, my little cottage that sleeps 2 contributes some $474 per 2-night stay to the local economy. And that's indirect spend, my spend and the spend of visitors.
You're over time. Can you wind up now, please?
Okay, so I guess I wanted to make the point, very briefly, I wanted to make the point that I understand that affordable housing and housing strategies are really important. Looking at short-term accommodation does not do that. Malden has had a decrease in the last 6 weeks from around 60 odd properties, short-term accommodation properties, to 36. That was as of Monday. 36 active listings, which says that Malden now is facing a crisis in short-term accommodation, and those listings have been removed from the market. Those properties are either on the market, they have been sold, or the owners do not want to deal with the issues associated with COVID, with an active outbreak when now widespread community transmission, well, relatively from what we've had.
Okay, thanks, Kate.
And not one of those properties has become a full-time rental, according to Wallers. That was my conversation with them. So I would urge council to undertake an investigation of the options for affordable housing. I would urge them to do a strategic planning process for tourism and including regulating accommodation if necessary. And I would really urge you to model the impacts of the proposals here.
Good presentation, Kate. Okay, question for governance. Do we have Donna Wood via Zoom, the waiting room, or not?
No, Donna isn't in the waiting room.
Okay. If Donna's not available, we'll go to Alison Jones. Is Alison with us? Thank you.
Hi, thanks for having me. I came partly to see the process, hello, but also because I was really interested in the conversation that came out from point 9 on the rates strategy. I'm not an Airbnb owner, I'm a homeowner, and I occasionally have friends come live with me because they don't have anywhere else to live. I have several friends who want to live here but can't. I have several friends that are in danger of losing their houses because of the increasing price and their rentals. So I think that Airbnb is can be a problem, but I also see the value that it brings to our town. And I don't think that charging Airbnb higher rates makes good sense for the long term, because in the long term, we're going to need the tourists to bring money to our town. It's Airbnbs that my family stays in when they come, when the house has got people living in it, because there's not room for them. It's Airbnbs that the bands stay in when they come and they play at the different venues in town. It's the Airbnbs that people come and stay in when we're doing events for the Fringe Festival or State Festival, and people need places to stay. So I think that a blanket approach to increasing rates for those businesses is problematic. But I do also, as a resident and as a friend, see the need that we need a strategy to address some of the housing. But as we just heard in the case of Malden, it's not making a difference. Those rentals that have been they're not turning into rentals. So instead of increasing rates, what I would like to propose is, instead of council increasing rates in this way, they look at decreasing rates. So if you have an Airbnb that you then sign over for a 12-month lease, you get a rate reduction. It's a bit more carrot and a bit less stick, and it might actually be a measurable way of showing that we can increase some of the housing ability within some of the stock that we have. And I don't mean the amazing mansions and the, there's some Airbnb stays that are amazing, those historic buildings. And I think that really attracts people to our town, and we shouldn't penalise people for owning and supporting that kind of stuff. But I do think that the standard 2 to 3 bedroom house that could be a family home, it should be something that is considered. And I think there's a lot of those on the market that perhaps have an opportunity to become rentals if we were to encourage that a little bit more. That's all. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Alison. Appreciate your input. The next speaker will be Amanda Kimmett. Amanda's on Zoom, and she's currently muted. No, she's not now, so that's good. You, Amanda.
Evening, everyone. That was a great suggestion who just spoke before. But I'm here not to mince words, so I'll just get right into it. Last year, I bought a property, and it was an old dairy that during the time of COVID, I was able to convert that old dairy in Malden to a short stay accommodation. And I go through Jamie Heffernan at Malden Getaways. And why I didn't want to keep it for myself is because I wanted to share it with other people, especially people from Melbourne, to enjoy Malden and its surrounds, promoting country Victoria. I feel that we rely very heavily on the tourism in Victoria. And I think by increasing the rates and putting this, anything short term would be part of the commercial rate legislation, you're just going to drive owners away from future rentals. I feel, unfortunately, that the council's got a very short-sighted view on this strategy, and I think you'll reap the negative repercussions of this change. The thing is, for example, Jamie will have, say, he's got 17 properties in Malden that generate, say some people come up for the weekend, they stay 2 nights, they hardly eat they won't cook anything, and then they'll go out for dinner. I mean, it says to generate up to 5 more times having visitors than than, just normal, rentals. So I feel really strong about this. And I just feel like some people, with what we've been going through the last 18 months, which has been sheer hell, I just feel that some people we don't have the money, and it's just going to turn people from saying, like myself, well, I won't rent it out. I'll keep it for myself and I'll enjoy it and come up once a month. So sorry, guys, I really think you've got to come up with something else, because I just think you're making a massive mistake. And I don't have the answer. I don't have the answer.
Thanks very much for presenting this evening, Miranda. Okay, next speaker will be Donna Greenway and Rod Prince. Rod's here.
Thank you for allowing me to speak. First thing I want to say is Castlemaine, its tourism is really a big industry in the town, and the short-term accommodation is one of the things that really help with the tourism. I've done a little calculation here. We can accommodate 80 people in one night. With that, if the 80 people all spend $100 a night, that equates to $8,000 a day, $56,000 a week, $2,912,000 a year. Now that's 9 properties. Now I've already spoken to people, there's 7 people talking about getting out of the industry. Now that equates to about $2,400,000 on the same basis. It's a lot of money to lose. And there'll be a lot of other people that are going to get out of it because they're not big enough to carry the extra expense or whatever, because of all the relative expenses that go with it. Everything else has been covered by everyone, so I won't go into the same boring things as everyone, but I was just wondering whether it does continue right through to every home business, whether they all get charged the commercial rate or not. So, or are they just picking out short-term accommodation? So, thank you for allowing me to present that.
Thanks very much for coming along this evening, Rod. Okay, the next speaker is Sarah Fordyce and Michael Croker.
Well, Sarah and I bought a property sold a couple of years ago. It's an historic miners' cottage. And as was mentioned previously, with historic properties, it's a small cottage. It's had a lot of cost and input. When we're not in there, we're at the time we try and short-term accommodation. I'll be really clear that with that sort of proposal, we'll just stop doing that because it's marginal as it is, and there's no upside in us copying that sort of rate increase. I guess what I'm really keen though is just the concept of fairness and equity. And I would hope this council, today is all about fairness and equity, not one of division. I'd remind the council that we're in recession technically. CPI at best 2%, possibly less. Obviously a pandemic, many people hurting, and tourism is the number one, if not the number one sector for Malden. And this sort of proposal doesn't tick any boxes. Inequitable, creates division, nowhere, way above CPI, and will absolutely force small, we're not Gina Reinhart's, small people to say, you know what, let's just take that off the market. We won't be available for short-term rental. We won't be making it available for rental, and it'll have a negative impact. So I urge council to strongly reject proposal number 9 and have a good think about what the core business is of this business, of this council: equity, fairness, and tourism.
Thanks, Michael.
And I probably would sort of reiterate a lot of those points. And I suppose we love the little house that we've got, but we really want to see Malvern as a really vibrant, happening place with lots of festivals and activities and things, and that is supported by a really vibrant tourism industry. And we feel we can contribute with the current situation. And we also objected to the one significant increase in commercial rates, because we do feel small businesses have had a really tough time, particularly in this last while. And then I also noted that there was an increase for some of the blocks of vacant land. I don't own a block of vacant land, but I just note that I love actually having some vacant land around. It adds to the amenity of the lovely, quiet town. Anyway, I quite like that. And I would like to pick up that last issue about divisiveness. It does seem to significant increases on one cohort of ratepayers vis-a-vis another. It just seems to set up a them and us, and why should we, why not others, etc. And I just think that divisiveness is exactly what we don't want to have as we try and all cope with the pandemic and the challenges facing our society. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Sarah. Appreciate your input. The next speaker is Jacqueline from Shed Shaker. Jacqueline.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, councillors, CEO. I'm actually here with a number of hats on. Obviously, Shed Shaker Brewing is one of my primary businesses. However, I'm also an short-term accommodation provider. I'm a landlord. I'm a parent of a teenager, and I'm the daughter of an ageing parent who I'm looking after in her golden years. So I've got a very broad perspective of many different housing needs in this community. I'm also a member and in fact on the committee of Mount Alexander Community Land Trust. And with my partner Doug, we've been occupying and playing a role within affordable housing for the past 9 years. So it's an area that we've got a lot of insight and knowledge and awareness about. I feel that recommendation number 9, seeking to increase rates for short-term holiday accommodation providers, is a knee-jerk and populist response to what we've noticed to be a very marked pile-on towards what people are marketing, or what people are calling Airbnbs. Now, Airbnb is a platform. It is no different to What If, Expedia, Stays. Indeed, Council run their own booking service. They have a platform through the Visitor Information Centre that all short-term holiday providers can register with. And Airbnb is no different. It's not, in fact, a model. It's a platform for promoting and booking accommodation. And there's been a really marked pile-on that somehow that is destroying our town and driving up property prices and creating a shortage of affordable rentals and indeed affordable houses. And it is simply not true. These accommodation providers have been in existence and have been operating in this town for decades and decades. Castlemaine has a really strong, and Malden also has a very strong tradition of providing incredibly unique quality B&B and short-term holiday accommodation. What we are seeing is a very marked increase in the number of visitors to our town. One of my other businesses down at the mill is partly why we are seeing more people come to this town. We're celebrating our producers, we're celebrating our small businesses, and people are coming here. They're coming as tourists, they're coming as returned family members. They're coming as friends and people that may have once lived here who return because it's a really vibrant town. And we need to be able to provide for them in short-term accommodation. We need to be able to provide for them to have those amazing, unique experiences. The issues around housing and the absolute crisis that is facing our children and our ageing people. I mean, my mother is in her mid-70s, and finding suitable accommodation for older single women is also a crisis point. This is an incredibly complex matter that shouldn't be treated with a knee-jerk populist response. Penalising small business in this town, whether it's our retail operators, producers like my other business, or short-term holiday rental providers, is counterproductive to stimulating our economy. And I urge councillors to reject recommendation number 9 as being short-sighted, knee-jerk, populist and ill-informed. This is a complex issue and it needs much more consideration. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Jacqueline. We've got someone here from Businessman Alexander.
We could be 1.5 minutes apart. Just having a glass of wine together, so I think we've broken 1.5 minutes already. Okay, so this hat is with Businessman Alexander. I joined the organisation, or joined it in 2014 when the current incarnation of our local business network was formed. But last year I joined the committee in response to some serious setbacks the organisation had experienced as a result of COVID. It was no surprise to discover that the committee and businesses that were driving the organisation and the businesses throughout the Shire were seriously impacted by COVID. So we've managed to now get together, work really collaboratively and try to function as an effective voice for our local business community. What we want to share with you tonight is some of those voices. We have approximately 380 people on our books, so to speak, who receive information and participate in various events that we run. Whenever we have a function or an activity, we have between 60 and 80 people in attendance. We have just over 30 paid financial members, which we're hoping to grow as people re-emerge from COVID. One of the things we've done is reach out and ask them how they feel they will be impacted by this proposal, particularly proposals 5, 7 and 9. So is that right? Have I got the right numbers? 8 and 9. Impacting the commercial sector, and overwhelmingly, we have not spoken to a single business that thinks that this is something they can take in their stride. People are gobsmacked. They feel very hard done by that. You know, expressions such as kick in the guts, slap in the face, and you've got to be joking with things that we've heard throughout our conversations with the business community. And I'll ask the Secretary of Business, Nan Alexander, just to pass on some of those direct comments and feedback from the business community.
Hi, my name is Genevieve Ward. I'm Secretary of Business, Nan Alexander. So just to read some of these quotes from local traders. Lisa Candy from the Tea Dispensary. We are a new business who opened in what we knew was going to be a challenging environment, and we have been lucky enough to be embraced by the Castlemaine community, managing to stay afloat and slowly grow. However, an increase in rates right now seems not just untimely and gutting, but tantamount to a betrayal from those who you would think would be looking to assist local businesses rather than skim from what small profits and possibly now and into the uncertain economic future. Another new business, the Five Flags Merchants Cafe, says, I don't believe it is a fair or viable idea to increase commercial rates at this time. All of our businesses have had substantial reductions in turnover. Long-time BMA members, Karina and Neil Bouch from Main Shoes and Accessories report, we've been lucky that we've been able to get grant money, which has kept us afloat, but it's still a lot less than what we would earn if our doors were open. We made sure we could pay our rent. We had to put our suppliers on notice and pay them off, and we cancelled stock. My husband Neil, or Karina's husband Neil, co-owner of Main Shoes, needed to find work in another job to help get through and stay in business. Steph from Corner Store Merchants says we've had limited rent reduction throughout COVID and had to negotiate with a private landlord. We've since incurred a rent increase during these last few lockdowns and no further reductions despite pleas. Due to the structure of the business, we weren't eligible for the majority of the grants. All community support from us continued. We have donated and supported a number of events in the local shire. Why can't council support us? We're sticking it out, creating a community which generates their tourism and ultimately builds their businesses. Tim from Boomtown Wines. I don't understand what council does to support the local business community as it is. So how can they justify increasing the rates? I also don't understand why I would enter the business awards when we should be seeking to work collaboratively and not in competition. And Rod and Donna from Castlemaine Boutique Accommodations have already spoken. More rates and what return do we receive?
Thanks, Jen. Thank you.
Just in conclusion, one of the business sectors we were unable to speak directly with, but we do absolutely support and back is our farming and agricultural sector. However, given that we recognise that the proposal to increase commercial rates is to offset a decrease in rates for the agricultural sector, I do just want to draw council's attention to news coming out today that our farming sector is on track to record a $73 billion increase in production. So it's, I think if we're all in this together, it is something that we need to not be discriminating one business sector against another business sector. Thank you.
Thanks, Jacqueline. Now hear from Brian Barber.
I'm here to comment on the proposal to read the farm rate. My name is Brian Barber and my wife and I farm at Foggers Gap Road. What I'm not here to do is to talk about the relative merits of the different cases. I believe the consultants have outlined their proposal, and a bit like Jacqueline, my view is I don't have any knowledge of the relative importance of the business rate or the general rate, but I can speak with some authority, I think, about the farm rate. First point I'd make is I don't think this has been well communicated, the development of the draft strategy. I don't think, I can't speak on behalf of the business community, I can speak, I think, on behalf of the farming community, where I think that this hasn't been well communicated by council, and I think there would have been a lot more feedback by farmers if it was communicated more directly that this strategy was taking place. I know it happens every 4 years, and theoretically, responsible businesses should know, but fundamentally, I'm a member of a small group of farmers who manage probably 80% of the land around Ravenswood South. All big farmers manage a lot of country on their behalf and on behalf of the community, and none of them were aware of the development of this strategy. Ignorance is no plea, but I think it could have been incumbent on council to more directly speak to people if they wanted input into this proposal. And looking at the timetable, I think it's a relatively short amount of time for community to comment on the consultant's report. Second point I'd make is that fundamentally, I disagree with what Jacqueline said about the farm rate. Farmers are not going to get a reduction in farm rates. There's a land management rate that the council has initiated for some time, which acknowledges farmers' responsibility to manage land in addition to run a business. And the farm rate has been, the land management rate, which is almost a default for the farm rate, has been set at 80% for some time. So this is not a rate reduction for farmers, for most farmers. It's actually a continuation of the status quo. And I think there's good justification for that. At the moment, again, as Jacqueline said, farming is enjoying a successful run at the moment, but I'm coming on 70 years old, and I can tell you in my probably 55 or 60 years of farming, this is a once in a century occurrence where you get a confluence of good seasons and good prices at the same time. You'd all be aware of what's happened the previous 10 to 12 years where farming was under undue pressure, and to take the average over a period of time is a much fairer way to justify what a rate strategy should do rather than just look at what's happening today or next week. I would hope that the current situation continues, both for my business but also on behalf of the
employment that produces and the expenditure that people make in the community. But my experience is that is not the case. So to justify a rate reduction or rise on the basis of current business conditions, I think is unfair. However, I'd also comment that COVID is something that's overwhelming everybody, and it's very hard to come up with a strategy that in some way incorporates that problem that's occurring with business. And I'm sure council's well aware of that. Just to justify, I think, the 80% in some ways, farmers manage a large proportion of the land in this shire, and it's a fundamental part of the amenity. A lot of people who are choosing to shift to this community, to this shire, are enjoying certainly the amenity that Castlemaine, Molan and other small cities provides, but it's also a lot to do with the landscape in the region. So I think in addition to farmers running their own business, they're also providing an asset to the community. And that needs to be, I think, acknowledged. I think it also needs to be acknowledged that farming, notwithstanding the current situation, has a very low return on investment for invested capital, very low return. And therefore, I think that in some ways also potentially justifies a rate differential. It's increasingly requiring capital. It's almost out of the reach of most people to afford, and without a rate differential, it doesn't take into account the fact that you're investing many, many millions of dollars with a return over the long period of marginally in front of the rate of inflation. So I think that we need to be careful that there is not rate shock. Capital improved values is a very poor form of a rating strategy, but it's the best one going around, and I don't think it truly reflects, it's a general principle across 3 or 4 different sectors of the community, and it doesn't suit anyone perfectly, any one of those groups perfectly, but I think farming is probably disproportionately affected if we take into account the amount of invested capital that's required. And the last point I'd make is that council's done, I think, a really good job of trying to manage farmland to the benefit of the community in terms of land management and in terms of protecting viable farmland. It would be sad to see that undermined by increasing land values and therefore increasing rates, forcing people to do what's happened around every other capital city and every other major centre in the country, and that is farming leaving those areas. If we want to maintain that, we need to make sure that the rates don't become an impediment to the industries continuing around in Alexander Shire. Thank you.
Thanks very much for speaking to us this evening, Brian. Is there anyone else here who would like to speak? Anyone outside, Speaker? No, it's not me. If there's no one else wishing to speak, just governance, is anyone else online?
No, Mayor Cordy, there's no one else online.
Okay, so
Can I just ask one question? I'm not sure if I've got the ability to ask a question. Can I ask the question?
You can ask a question, Brian.
The document that's been produced, which I think is a good document, irrespective of whether people like the outcome, I think it's a good document, and it outlines the thinking behind the strategy. Is there another document behind that actually provides deeper analysis of the impact of this, not so much in modelling what happens, but justifying to council why each of those differentials would come into place? I would have thought there'd be some modelling done that if it comes in at 130, if the business rate is 130% and the farm rate's 80%, not the effect on overall budget, but their justification to council for those rates. And I just wonder if there's any more documentation. It may or may not be public, but at the same time, what I've seen, I think, is a public document which is for consultation and for feedback. But I would have thought there'd be something behind that.
Do you want to speak? Director Knight, would you like to speak to it?
Thank you, Mayor Cordy. There is further information available. That's the economic analysis that was undertaken by the consultant. But as the Speaker has presented just now, what is in front of you is the public document, but there's certainly further analysis that's been undertaken over the last 4 months that has been presented to our executive team and our councillors as in the lead up to the public question time tonight.
Thanks, Director Knight. Look, I just thank everybody that's come and given us feedback this evening. Thank you very much for coming along. As mentioned earlier in the evening, Council will take all of that on board and make a decision on the rating strategy at our November meeting. Thank you all. Good night. Councillors, if you can stay online, we're going to have Councillor CEO meeting after this meeting. Thank you.